All right, time for another edition of the Industry 45 podcast show. GiantTV.ca is the website. You can also check it out on YouTube, Giant TV Niagara, also at country89.com, giantfm.com, and now available at musiclifemagazine.net. Today's guest, super pumped for this. His name is Carl Dixon. You might know him from bands like Coney Hatch, April Wine, The Guess Who. He is from Sault Ste. Marie. Okay, Sault Ste. Marie, or the Sioux, home of the Greyhounds. But 1979, though, he moved to Montreal, played with a band called Firefly. And then in 1981, he decided to move to Toronto and join Coney Hatch. Spent most of the 80s with Coney Hatch on tours like Iron Maiden. Yeah, that's right, Judas Priest. And in the 90s, he also toured with April Wine. He also did a number of solo projects. And in 1997, he was invited to join The Guess Who as a lead singer. He performed and recorded with the band until about the spring of 2000, and then again early 2004 until 2008. But his world really changed in 2008. He was in a horrific car accident out in Australia, hospitalized for over 5 months, in a coma. They didn't know if Carl would ever make it through this. Clearly he did, because he's here as my guest. And about 28 years after the release of Coney Hatch's latest album, they regrouped. Andy Curran made him a promise they would do another album, and they did Coney Hatch 4. Not only is he a singer-songwriter, he's also an author. He's got an autobiography out called Strange Way to Live. He's also a public speaker, and more importantly right now, he has a brand new solo album out called Unbroken. It's his 8th solo album, and it was released in November of 2019. Super pumped for this. I told Carl in a text message, I finally met her. Talking about the girl from Last Night's Dream, one of the best Coney Hatch songs ever. Stick around, don't go anywhere. Industry 45 podcast show with Mr. Carl Dixon up next.
You're listening to the Industry 45 podcast show with Shane Christopher Neal on Giant TV.
All right, always a privilege, I think, to talk to anybody who was born in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Carl Dixon, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Yes, me and Phil and Tony Esposito.
Oh, that's right. Hey, look at that. Were you a fan of Phil and Tony?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I was a fan of Tony because I was a goaltender.
Yeah, Tony O.
So I'm assuming, being born in Sault Ste. Marie, other than hockey, the only other thing you could do is play guitar and sing. And maybe try to become a rock star. So you're in Sault Ste. Marie, but you go at an early age, I would assume, to Montreal, right? You leave in 1979 to go to Montreal to play with a band called, what, Firefly?
Firefly,
And
yes.
did you go there for that purpose, or did you go to Montreal just to do whatever and then just kind of stumble across this band, or did you know?
I'd had a previous band of my high school chums that foundered on the rocks in Newfoundland. That's where we went and broke to pieces. So while I was in Newfoundland, I'd met this group Firefly, who were also out there at that time, and made friends with them. And when my other group broke up, I called them and said, just on the off chance that they were looking for somebody to join their band. And so that's how I ended up moving to Montreal to join the waiting spot for me.
What kind of band was it? Rock band?
Oh yeah, the bar band scene at that time. A lot of rock bands were kind of on that late '70s. Well, actually, they were a little bit odd. There was some Uriah Heep in there, some Beatles, Green Eyed Lady by Sugarloaf, because they had an organ piano player in the band. So you worked some keyboard stuff in there too. And I think we got into the Cars and then writing some of our own songs as well.
So you weren't there very long, right? Because it was only a couple years later that you moved to Toronto.
Well, yes, it was about a little over a year and a half. And then I realized Montreal was not where I was going to go further with this music drive and desire. So I came back to Ontario and started looking around in the Toronto classified ads, actually, for what the next band would be. But the mission was always find the next band wherever I went.
Right. So did you know of Coney Hatch before you came to Toronto, or you stumbled
Not
across
a clue.
them? Did you know Andy?
Not a clue. Never heard of them.
No, you didn't know Andy Curran, none of that?
No. I met them solely through the ad in the Toronto Star classified ads that their manager at the time put. Working rock band with management needs or seeks singing guitar player. So it all sounded right to me, so I signed up and won the auditions.
It looks like things moved quickly, though, right, with Coney Hatch, because you were out early touring around. And I know through the 80s, you were on some great tours, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. So talk about that time in music. You join a band, and kind of give us kind of a recap. You join the band, you go to rehearsals, and then right away you're out on the road, or kind of what happened there? Because you were signed to a record deal, correct?
Yes. What happened was we were just another bar band at the time with low-level management and a string of dates for as long as we wanted to do that kind of thing. But when I joined, they'd already been writing their own songs, and I had been writing my own songs before I joined for years before that. So everybody in the band kind of had that ambition in place. You have to have songs if you want to get anywhere. So we continued to write. As soon as we were out working together, after 1 week of rehearsal, we were off to Quebec to get back in the circuit. And we started writing songs that ended up on that first album together right away in the first week we were working together. And then about 2 months after that, Kim Mitchell came and saw us and decided he wanted to work with us because he liked the songs we were writing, and he had just broken up Max Webster not long before that, and he was looking for something to do. So he recorded a demo with us, and within 6 months of me joining the band, we were talking to record companies about a record deal. And by the end of that year, which was 81, we had signed an international record deal with Polygram and a Canadian one with Anthem Records. We started to work on our first album, Coney Hatch, in late November of 81, and it was released in the summer of 82. And yes, before we knew it, we were touring NHL hockey rinks, opening for big boys like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and it all went extremely quickly. A combination of having the right sound and the right combination of people in the band suddenly, and the musical style of the time. And we had a good collection of talents and personalities in Coney Hatch.
And when you signed the record deal, for you, what was that moment like? Because I always say to an artist, when did you feel like you really became a rock star? And if you talk to someone, it's like when I put my name and I signed that record deal, I felt it then. Was it like that for you? And what was it like working under Polygram and a label back in the early 80s?
I don't know if I ever really felt like a rock star. I felt, in fact, the day we signed our record deal was more of a shock than a joyous day, because we were stuck with a lawyer's bill that took almost every penny of our advance for signing.
Right. Yeah.
And we had something like $300 left to throw gas in the van to go to the next job in Quebec. So that was a bit of an eye opener to how the music business works. I'm not sure we ever got or I at least didn't get the rock star feeling, but I got the feeling, wow, we're in the game. We're in the midst of things. We see how it all works. We're right there with the big boys. And the saying I got out of that period of time was, we didn't make it to the top, but we could see the top from where we were.
That's a good point, yeah.
And there were lots of great experiences. None of us in that band really went to university. So it became kind of the university training ground, or maybe college training ground, for all the things we needed to know for being in the music business. And it stood me in good stead ever since. The really confidence building and the lessons we learned from the people we worked with and the tours we went on and the bigger bands we observed and how things were done. So
when you say bigger bands, and we mentioned this, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, so how does one band get on a bill like that in the 80s? Because that's pretty heavy hitting. It
helps when you have Rush's manager.
Well, there you go, right? I guess that makes perfect sense.
Yes. So, I laugh about all the people that say it's all about who you know. Well, yeah, duh.
Yeah, good point.
Of course it is, because people have influence, and the people who have influence then get more access to the things that are good and that succeed. And in addition, people want to work with people they like, and so they recommend good things to each other if they have influential friends, and so yeah, we had something good to offer, and then somebody big and influential took us on because of that.
Right. And so let's move just to we'll say the 90s. You were on tour with April Wine, correct? Back in the 90s?
In the 90s, I joined the Guess Who.
The Guess Who in 97.
Yes. April Wine came in a period. I was with the Guess Who twice, and April Wine came in the period between for 4 years.
Yep.
In the 90s, I had a songwriting deal as a staff songwriter for a company called Almo Irving Music in the States, and they were A&M Records publishing branch. So and the Almo in Almo Irving stood for Alpert and Moss, because A&M Records was founded by Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss. Herb Alpert, the old Tijuana brass guy. So that was who signed my checks every week, every 2 weeks for a year, I guess. And I did a lot of traveling to do songwriting then, and met a lot of good people. And I got a song on Baywatch. Yeah,
I was going to say, Taste of Love, right? And Jimmy Jamison was singing it.
Jimmy Jamison sang it on Baywatch, but I'd written it with a friend of mine down in L.A. called Brett Walker, and we did a demo for it. And they liked it so much, Jimmy Jamison's band took it over, but they just couldn't play it the way we had done our demo. So they called us in to replace Jimmy's band and redo the backing track, and then Jim Jamison sang the lead vocal to what we had put on there. So that's me and my friend Brett Walker on the final product that's on the Baywatch thing. And then I did my own version of it on my first solo album as well.
So you were talking about the Guess Who there for a second, and it was 97 that you joined the Guess Who. Mm-hmm. And then, you did that to what? You said 2 stints, right? You did 97, and then you did again 2004 to 2008.
Well, yeah, the first run was into to May 2000, because the original lineup with Burton and Randy decided to get together for a reunion. So guys like me that weren't in the original band had to go home. and so I was such a fan of the band, though, that I said, "Oh, gee, that's fine with me. I'm not going to squawk. I want to see this." So I went home and worked on my second solo album, and in the meantime, April Wine gave me a call and said, "Look, we're doing a new album, and we need to add a member to help us fill out the sound. So do you want to come out with us?" So I joined I started in 2001 with them, and each year at the start of the new year, I was surprised when they renewed my contract. But yeah, I ended up doing 4 years in a row with April Wine there.
And then 2004, 2008 again with the Guess Who.
With the Guess Who, after the Guess Who reunion did not sustain itself, and the guys who owned the name and were in charge of it, Jim Cale and Gary Peterson, called me and asked would I come back and resume my old job, because some people in the band didn't need to work to pay their bills, and Jim Cale and Gary Peterson needed to go to work.
Right.
So they couldn't sit around and wait for the big boys to decide when they felt like leaving their house again.
What was the biggest thing you learned from playing with the Guess Who and being involved and around them?
The biggest thing was the power of the music, the power of a strong song catalog that people love, because even when it wasn't the original guys playing it, people didn't care. They just wanted to hear those songs, and they loved them, and it brought them back to happy memories of their life. And so that's when I realized how amazing and powerful it is to have a set of strong songs from any band that people love those tunes. And I guess the other big thing I learned was that sometimes success breeds problems. Every successful band, almost every successful band I've seen, some money and power start to play a role in getting people angry at each other, and power play is going on.
So in 2008, so you've learned some great things. It's 2008, and then you get into a car accident. By the way, I was at the Carl Dixon benefit, at the Phoenix Concert Theater.
Yes.
Yes. So 2008 car accident.
I'd like to add one thing to the Guess Who lessons. I also learned from being on that platform that the Guess Who provided me that I was reassured that I had the skill set, that I belonged to doing this, and that my early training really did set me up well to continue on being a singer and performer and guitar player and entertainer.
Yeah, that's a great lesson.
Yes, it gave me, it restored my confidence, because prior to getting called by the Guess Who, I'd started to wonder, I had kind of a down patch, and I wondered, can I keep doing this? But if I had given in at that down patch, I never would have had all the great experiences I've had since then by sticking with it. So the Guess Who really restored my confidence in myself by having that opportunity.
And you went back, right, January 2016 to do 2 shows?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My time with the Guess Who was cut prematurely short.
Yes.
By the car accident I had in 2008, and in 2016, I'd stayed on the emergency sub list for the Guess Who and kept a U.S. work permit all through the years after my time with them ended, in case they ever needed me for an emergency. And in 2016, they had 2 dates that they needed somebody to come in, because the singer that replaced me couldn't be there. So I got invited back to do that, and it was hugely rewarding on a few levels. First,
sure, absolutely.
I still know how to do this just fine. It was just like putting on a pair of comfortable shoes. And second, I got to, get the feelings mended with the guys from the band who were so upset when I had my accident. I never got to really talk to them in the aftermath of my crash, so I didn't know that they'd been devastated by it. When I was the guy at the center of everything from my car crash, and so all I was aware of was how much it affected me, and I didn't understand that it shook up all their worlds as well. Because when I was with the Guess Who as the Burton replacement, the crew then thought, well, we're just going to do this forever. Carl's the guy now, and he's ready to rock for years to come. So that's taken care of, and suddenly, nope, that plan is out the window.
How long were you unable to play or do anything?
I was totally broken to bits for a few months in Australia, where my accident happened, in the hospital, and unable to walk or do anything. But I returned to playing guitar as music therapy before I got out of the hospital. And if you were at that benefit show, you saw that I was able to sit on a stool and play guitar a bit. And that's kind of how I convinced them to let me leave the hospital. I did a little performance for the patients and the staff to prove I was well enough to be released.
Here's my audition to leave.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Because they didn't want me to leave. They thought I was leaving too soon, but I was just determined. I wanted to get back home, and I'd been in Australia for months and months, so it was a big deal to get home, but I really wasn't ready, and I couldn't perform the way I used to for probably a couple of years at least.
Mm-hmm. So then when you got back and you're feeling better, and your buddy Andy Curran wants to do a new Coney Hatch album, because that's what he promised. And you come up with Coney Hatch 4, right? In 2013? Yes,
exactly. That came about because when people heard that I was up and about and Coney Hatch was ready to do a few shows, we got a call to play in England at an annual festival there called Firefest. And so we just knocked it out of the park with that. We'd never gotten to play England in the old days, even though we had tons of fans there. So a lot of people had been waiting 30 years to see Coney Hatch. And So that went really well, and from that we got offers to do a new album. And that from Europe, 2 different European labels gave us an offer. So we turned that into, okay, let's do this together, and we'll write new songs. And really, it was probably the most enjoyable album I'd ever made with Coney Hatch. And I think everybody in the band felt that way, too.
And you wrote a book as well, Strange Way to Live, back in 2015. So you're an author now, too?
Yeah. Well, it just seemed, for a time after my accident, it wasn't clear whether I'd ever be able to return to performing. And so I had some time on my hands, but also some people thought, well, maybe you ought to prepare for other directions in life and maybe become a speaker. So writing a book would support that ambition. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. And at first I had no confidence that anybody would want to read what I wrote. But then once I got started, I really got into it. I wrote and wrote and wrote.
And you public speak as well, right? You go to different corporate events. I saw that. Great.
Yes. And strangely, what I often talk about is safety.
See, safety is very important.
Yeah.
Let's get to the meat and potatoes here. Okay, so that's great, and I love the stories, and I wanted to kind of set it up so that anybody who wasn't familiar with you or Coney Hatch got to understand a little bit more about you. But you have a brand new album out. Came out in November 29th, 2019, called Unbroken. So a great title. Yeah. And so take us back to writing this album and what that was like for you and what was on your mind at the time.
Well, writing this album, it came about as once again an offer from Europe. A label there offered me a deal, so I had no songs that were ready to go for this at the time, for this kind of project. I'd been writing a bunch of other stuff. But they put me together with a German guitar player who's well known over there for a few projects, and his name's Robbie Bobel, and he started sending me his musical ideas. Just a guitar riff with a drum machine kind of backing. And then my role was to think of the lyrics and the melodies, the vocal parts that would go with these musical ideas. And it was really interesting. It was a good match, I guess, the two of us put together, because everything he sent me triggered an idea, a story in me. All the stuff on this record was newly written for this record within the the year leading up to it. So it's all fresh, and it really does reflect the things I've learned, the state of mind I've had, the changes in my life, and the love that has come to me, and really the wisdom that I feel I've gathered after all the experiences of my life so far.
So when the record was done, and we'll talk about some of the songs, but when the record was done and you listened to that probably multiple times, were you happy with it? Were you satisfied with the lyrics in it, with how it came together, the production of it? Did you sit back and say, I'm super happy with this album right now?
I'll give that a yes. There's something funny that Elton John once said. Somebody asked him which of his albums is his favorite of all the ones he's done, and he answered the next one. Because because you're always moving forward. But when I listen to this record, I think, I meant every word of the lyrics I wrote. They reflect me and my thinking absolutely accurately. I wasn't writing to please somebody else. I was writing from my thoughts and my beliefs and my heart. And the melodies are all just a good use of my voice. The only, there's a few details here and there in the mix that maybe I would do them differently if I had another run at it. But yeah, I'm absolutely happy with this. And I agree with a number of people who've suggested that it might be my best solo album.
Can't Love a Memory. Opens with that. Great tune.
You might find
And it just, I thought, as soon as I downloaded or purchased or whatever you do on Apple, I got it on Apple and I had it in my truck, and I'm like, right away, it just, there was hooks within the song, melody hooks, great lyrics. I thought, what a great way to start out an album.
Yeah, and it's funny. It was the last song I wrote for the record, and the last one completed, but I thought, man, this is so strong. It belongs at the start of the album. It doesn't matter when I wrote it. It was very interesting, the process. It got more and more streamlined with each song I completed.
What else did I say? Nothing Lasts Forever was another one that stood out to me.
That's the story of Coney Hatch in a song, right?
Yeah,
there.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Eh? So were you ever worried that, when you're the voice of something, you're the voice of Coney Hatch, that people listen to a solo album, and God, this is Coney Hatch. It doesn't really matter if it's Carl Dixon or it's Coney Hatch. It's all the same. What do you say to that? Because there's a lot of singers. Harry Hess is another guy, in Harem Scarum.
Yeah.
With First Signal, and people go, but that's like Harem Scarum, but it's not. But how do you react to that?
I would say that the sound of Coney Hatch inevitably was an expression of me and how I think and the way I like music to sound, even though I had partners on that. And Coney Hatch was the combination of me with those guys. This music is the combination of me with the guitar player partner who helped me with it. And so I guess the common thread would be how I sing, how I write lyrics, and then the guitar kind of production approach, the rock feeling that I like to have backing me. So it's almost inevitable. The way I have gotten away from that in some cases is I did a few solo albums with a completely different approach. The one before this one, I did my version of a country music.
I was going to say you did a country album, did you not? Right.
Yeah, and I really like that. It had a lot of great songs that a lot of people who don't know me from a hole in the ground for rock music really like that stuff. And I did another album that was a whole mix of different styles, my first record after my accident, called Lucky Dog. And I've done a Christmas album that was, really old school sounding. So there's a lot of sounds I'm capable of. So really the common thread between me making a rock album and Coney Hatch making an album is this is how I like rock music to sound.
Good point. What about Summer Nights?
Summer nights are for falling in love. Follow me back to a memory. The girl on the beach walking slow in the sunset. Dazzling smile and the ocean breeze, blowing your hair back. That was the night we met.
But my favorite, because I just love how the thing starts, right, with the harmony vocal. Yeah. So what a great tune. In fact, I think for whatever reason, I listened to "Can't Love a Memory," and then I don't know if it was the title, but I just went to "Summer Nights." I don't know, and I was like, yeah, I love the way the song starts. Great song.
Thanks. That's my wife's favorite. And for when I was working on the record, I thought, oh man, if this was the 80s, this would be the single.
I would have thought the same thing, because I kind of listened to that and then I go and listen to parts of songs, right? Like I'm driving, I just want to kind of get a gist of what it's about and then go front to back with the album. But that was the one where I went, yeah, if radio was going to get a song, it'd be this one.
Yeah, I really felt that one tells a story. It's got the textures and the hooks, and it really has that soaring kind of lift in the chorus that makes you feel good.
What else do I want to ask you about this album? Where was it recorded?
It was recorded partly in Germany. A lot of the tracking was sent back and forth over the internet. And I did all the vocals in my home studio. But then we recorded the drums at a beautiful facility in Toronto.
Who played drums on it?
Oh, Mark Santer from Santers.
Okay.
Played half the album, and then a young up-and-comer named Dylan Gowan. He's Larry Gowan's son.
Oh, so he's
And
got
he played
no musical talent. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. That's funny. So, and you're out. Actually, you know what? I saw this. You posted it the other day. Coney Hatch, April 1st. Is it 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in Toronto, or 1st and 3rd?
No, could be any one of those 3 nights.
Oh, it's any one of those 3. Okay.
Yes, well, by the time this comes out on your station, I think maybe the announcement will have been made, but it's to do with the El Macombo.
Oh,
grand
right.
reopening.
Yeah. I see a lot of articles being posted and photos, and I was with someone last week that I was there saying it's absolutely, like, it'll blow your mind.
So there's Michael Weckerly, who owns it and restored the place, likes to do a festival. He used to have it at his house called Weckfest, but he's going to have that for the grand reopening of the El Macombo.
Gotcha.
And he's insisted that he wants Coney Hatch to be part of that. So we're taking him at his word. And it'll be one of those nights.
Okay,
we're hoping for the 3rd.
So I shouldn't promote that it's going to be all 3 days, because then people will be pissed off with me if they're standing outside and Coney Hatch isn't playing. Sean, how long has Sean Kelly been in the band?
He first played with us in 2014, and then we didn't have any shows for a couple of years, and then we called him back in when we resumed in 2017 or 17, I believe. And he's just a perfect fit for the band. Andy Curran likes to say he's such a fanboy. he loves the band. He loves the records. He bought the records when he was a kid, and wants to play them perfectly. So you can't ask for a better fit than that in your band.
Absolutely. Just he's got like kind of rock star persona. Come on, a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And he's an author as well. I talked to Sean a couple of times on this program.
Oh, yeah.
So any solo shows coming up this summer, or anything as far as the support of going out to play some of the songs on Unbroken?
So far, I've got a few solo acoustic shows, but then on the American side of the border, I'll be doing some of the stuff, but that doesn't really help Canadians much, I guess.
No.
I'll have to keep you posted on that, because it's still in the works as to how I can pull this off. The music is as we've talked about, some of my favorite I've ever done. I need to figure out how to get people interested in coming to see a show for it. So this kind of talk will help.
That reminded me of something. So with Coney Hatch, so classic rock radio, like where we are too, we'll play Coney Hatch, right? It's classic rock. It's been around. As an artist, you put out new music, but really the platforms as far as radio aren't there, because radio's getting, like, if you're a band like, I mean, I could think of a number of bands that would be played out there, but they're not kind of people like you that have had a whole myriad of great songs and albums, are now putting out new records. Radio's really not picking those up, right? Like if you're not in the right genre, you're kind of in space, and we got to get your music out there. People are getting it online. I get it, but is that frustrating for you?
It's frustrating in one sense. It's more a reality check, I guess. And I used to be mystified about it, and then somebody acquainted me with the rule about the demographics and the power of the advertisers,
right?
in the way the playlists are selected. And really, the big thing that I learned was that many stations fear somebody changing the channel when they hear a song they don't know.
Right. Because
their advertisers pay them rates based on people not changing the channel, but sticking with this station because they hear familiar music they love. So when you have new music coming in, no matter how beloved the artist may be, it's a new tune that might scare people off. So it's quite a different game than when I came up, that's for sure.
Right, because it's not, whether it's you, whether it's Tom Kiefer, whether it's Jack Russell, it doesn't matter. It's like you've had a great catalog in the past that got played on radio over and over. You write some new songs, and radio goes, you know what? We're going to stick with, the girl from last night's dream. So I had to throw that in there somewhere. But like, and I always thought that would be frustrating if I was, the artist, because you're not getting the love that you got at the beginning type thing.
Well, you know what? You just have to change your expectations and your marketing strategy. What I have come to realize is most of my connection with the audience now is from live shows where they can actually respond, and the people that care about the music will get an opportunity to hear it and buy it from me and make a connection directly to me that way. Where the bigger machine that was once in place to send your record out all over the world at one time and get radio play just isn't there anymore. So that's just the nature of the changing times, I suppose. But if there's always a way to go forward if you don't get stuck on the old ways.
See, you're such a positive thinker, man. For everything. I guess, what you went through, I guess no wonder you are.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why I called my next album after my crash up Lucky Dog.
Yes, because, Lucky Dog.
There's so much in this life to be grateful for, and it's all in how you view things. Well,
and I'm going to tell this story, although no one would ever know this, but we were going to do this yesterday until I couldn't find my headphones because I left them at the radio station. I called you swearing and in a panic. You're like, how about you relax and we do it tomorrow? So I thought I'd have to get that story in there.
Yeah. There's so many times that we make ourselves feel bad, and it's not necessary. Yeah. A friend of mine has a great phrase. He says, how do you want to feel? So I try and remember that a lot.
So this album you can obviously get on Spotify, on Apple Music. I got it on Apple Music, but you can purchase it as well. Your website, you have a website, correct? Yes.
Yes, website. You can order directly and get the CDs signed, any of the CDs from my catalog, and also at the Sunrise Record Store at Cloverdale Mall. There's one
record store left.
Place. There's one left. Sunrise has a few outlets around, but each one of them runs kind of independently. So the one in Etobicoke at Cloverdale Mall, they carry this new album in the store as well.
And I'm trying to find it here, your email, or not your email, your website address.
It's carldixon.com.
That's pretty simple. And listen, I appreciate a few months ago you playing The Girl from Last Night's Dream for Steve and I, because when we didn't see it on the set list, we were very upset. We had to go have a shot of whiskey, and we were like, you know what, we're not going to hear the song, are we? And Steve goes, yeah, we're going to go talk to Carl. We're going to listen to this song. Come on, he'll play it.
And he was right.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. You're an awesome guy, a big fan of Coney Hatch. So a real privilege to do this. And like I said, a great album. I encourage anybody to go and pick this up and listen to some of the great songs. And you're going to have some favorites like everybody else. And you know what? It's definitely something that I'm sure you're so proud of. And I'm proud of you because it sounds awesome, man.
Thank you so much. The album is called Unbroken. It closes with a song, Unbroken, that I feel really is just maybe the most powerful statement as a song I've ever made. So that one I'm proud of too, that I got to that level of artistry.
You're awesome. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.